Hey class, today we're going to be talking about chapters 61 and 62. Chapter 61 is coping with change, and the first thing we're going to do is talk about retirement. Retirement's something that we're all looking forward to, but it's something that when a lot of people reach that, they see a lot of the setbacks that come with retirement. So the first thing that people don't think about is whenever they retire, they're going to see their friends, family, and loved ones a lot more. Now that sounds really nice, but as we've been with COVID and things like that, an excessive amount of time with someone can lead people to change, especially when you didn't have that time before. So you need to readjust to that new lifestyle. Secondly, your income is going to drop. So unless you budget accordingly, like we've learned in earlier weeks, you're not going to have the same spending means that you used to, and that can affect a lot of people. And lastly, with this, some people define themselves by the way they work and what their work provides for them. So whenever they lose that with the retirement, they lose sense of worth. So that can really affect people. Now, I thought it was really interesting that 1/3 of people have difficulty with retirement. So again, 1/3 of people have difficulty with retirement. Now, another thing that's really hard with coping with change is losing a loved one. So something that's interesting is if the wife dies, the male survivor or the husband has a higher probability of dying sooner than if the husband died before the wife. The wife will go on living longer. So I thought that was pretty neat. Now, the only thing that's worse than losing a loved one is losing multiple loved ones. And for that, there's a couple of coping mechanisms that person might go through. So with that, they might join a support group, which is recommended and beneficial for them in order to express their griefs and the such. They might reach out to their spiritual leaders. So these could be anything from like their yoga instructor, if they did that, all the way to like a religious leader from their church or whatever sect they're from. Now, something that's a red flag is they might go through these stages of grief and they might think of ending their life. So if they come to this point, this is where you really need to monitor them, to ask them to get help, to really, be on their butts in a way to make sure that they don't end their life. And the last one that they do is there's a stigma with going and seeing like a mental health care provider. But if you just reach out and talk with them and tell them that it's okay and be there for them, this is probably the best because they're clinically trained and they have a better sense of where they're at in the stages than we would. Next, we're going to go with changes of living. So living alone is going to present a lot of challenges. One of the things we take for granted is going out and eating or cooking ourselves a meal. If we're living alone, and again, the geriatric patients generally tend to live alone, they're going to not cook themselves a big meal. They're going to maybe go get a soda and a bag of chips, just something to sustain their hunger, not necessarily get a well-rounded meal. So they're going to be undernourished because they're not eating well-rounded meals. And something else that they might not be catching is their condition might worsen over time if they're living alone and nobody's there to catch it. So they might have a hearing disability that worsens over time, or a sight problem, and it will get worse. So when it gets to a point, some people think that relocation is something that they're going to need to do. And there's a couple of things that people relocate. The first one is safety. They're saying like, hey, my house has too many stairs, or etc. Another one is family. Family members say, hey, come in, we'll take care of you. And then maybe they have like some type of symbiotic relationship where they pay that family member for that care. And the third one is location. So let's say they want to move to a warmer climate versus a colder climate. That could be a reason. And last one is a lifestyle change. So they're getting into the years and they want to, go to the beach, or they want to go to the mountains, or come to the West and see cowboys in Texas. Something that they're always going to need to do is when they hit that age, they're going to want to stay connected. So some of the things they can do is they can do volunteering. So this is the best one for for the older population, and it's the retired RSVP, the Retirement and Volunteer Program. So they take the retired community and they say, hey, what do you do? and they match people up with what they were good at when they were working. Some people might want to go back to school, so if they want to continue their education, as long as they might have some fears going back to school and being with a younger crowd, but someone might like that. Another thing that they could or really need to get into is hobbies, to find what you need to do. One of the things that a lot of people don't understand is your hobby isn't necessarily work, so whenever they retire or they come out of that working stage, they don't have any hobbies. And the last thing we're going to talk about is the difference between spirituality and religion. There is a difference. So spirituality is mainly feelings and thought, and this is necessarily going to go with a yoga mindset, like Krita and Kriya type things, versus a religion. And a religion is more of an institution and an established tradition, like a church. So this ends chapter 61. Now we're going to talk about chapter 62 in driving. So we're going to talk about crash rates and traffic violations and go through everything from the reasons for the problems, how they compensate for these problems, and should they drive. So an older person will have less crashes per year than a younger driver. However, they're also on the road less, and an older person will have more crashes per mile than a younger person. Two of the traffic violations that an older person has that are common are failure to yield right-of-way and merging with traffic. Also, the crash rate with an older person will increase at the age of 70, and it will greatly increase at the age of 80 and above. So they also have less crashes during certain times of the day. Those times are in the early morning, in the evening, and during inclement weather. Also, this can be attributed to they're not driving during these times. If it's raining or snowing outside, they're probably not going to drive. Now, the reasons for these problems as a person age, their reflex diminish, their eyesight diminishes, their hearing, just due to us getting older. So that's one of the reasons. Another one could be a medical disorder such as dementia. It might take a person longer to reach A to B when they're driving if they all of a sudden have a memory loss or some type of forgetful fit, whatever you want to call it. And that means that they're on the road longer. When they're on the road longer, that could increase the chance of them having a car wreck. It also could be due to a lack of experience. If a loved one did die, it's more common in females than males to have this lack of experience. So if their husband dies, all of a sudden now they're the ones that's driving. So this lack of experience could hinder them with their driving due to whatever reason, wherever they're going. Now, some of the ways to compensate for these problems, many of them are going to avoid driving at night. They're going to take rest whenever they're on long trips. So frequent rest stops, get out, re-energize themselves, and continue on. Another thing is going with technology and allowing it to help you. So automatic stopping, things like Garmin, GPS. I mean, every phone almost has it now. That's a smartphone. They're going to tell them where they're going, so it won't allow them to forget. And surgery. So if a person goes for a routine checkup, all of a sudden they have cataracts, well, you can still slightly see until it progresses to a point, and then they might have surgery to remove it. Now they're able to see again to a certain extent. So those are some ways to compensate. Now let's talk about the last one, the driving decision. Driving gives most people a sense of independence and freedom, so getting this taken away is very uncomfortable for them, and it can be a hassle to allow them to give up this right that they have. So if you suspect one or the doctor does, having them sit down and expressing that you're concerned for their safety is a big priority in doing this. Now, the federal government has a really good way of making sure everyone's safe when they're driving when they're getting older. One of the ways that they do this is the renewal process decreases from every 8 years to 2 years. They also require that the person renews in person rather than online, and they require that person to take a vision test and a road test to make sure they're seeing and interpreting what they're doing when they're driving. So I hope you enjoyed this, hope you learned something, and I'll see you soon. Thank you.